Looking around, I finally see I think I need a change. The rat race, I wanna flee, my world I'll rearrange. I'm getting back to the roots of how it's meant to be. Growing gardens, picking fruit, racing livestock, living free. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough.
And I'm your other host, Rachel Jameson.
We're glad you're joining us today. We've got a really good one today. We're going to talk about some ways to use fallen leaves. Everybody's got that problem going on right now. I guess we'll call it a problem, but it's not really. I look at it as a gift. But before we jump into that, what have you been doing on the homestead this week, Rachel?
Honestly, not a whole lot. It's been a pretty busy week with work.
Nothing.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been playing with my greenhouse a lot. I told you I got the aquaponics system going in there. Got that completely done. I got seeds planted and some stuff's up like 3 or 4 inches already growing in the seed. I mean, it just amazes me how quick things grow on an aquaponic system. I mean, I think I seen broccoli and cauliflowers popped up. I got some cress in there that's doing really well. It's probably the thing that's growing the best in there because it just loves water. Peas. I even did some peas. I'm going to try to trellis up the backside of the greenhouse. Just all kinds of stuff going on in there. It's been fun playing with that and getting that going. And, the wood stove has been working great. It hasn't been real cold, but I did a little experiment and I stacked bricks all around that wood stove to try to do more of like a mass for it to heat up. And it's working really well. I fired that up and then got it real good and hot, and that stayed warm for several hours. So I think having all them bricks I piled up around the wood stove in there is really going to make a big difference as far as holding the heat in there. So yeah, it seems to be going pretty well there. But that's what I've been doing, other than just the regular old things.
That sounds amazing. Just sitting there in front of the fire. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Do you have a teapot on that fire yet?
I did take one out there the other day, and I made some chamomile tea while I was sitting there working.
Nice.
It was pretty nice. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I like working out there at night because it's just, I don't know, it's dark outside and it's really well lit in there. I got some nice lighting in there and get the fire going, and the fish. I got a little trickling sound there because I got a little a pump kind of recirculating the water constantly down there, one of them real low wattage pumps, and it's just really relaxing to sit out there.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I might fall asleep though.
Yeah,
it's
almost too relaxing. I find myself going out there and just not getting anything done because I just kick back in a chair and just relax. But that's okay. You need times like that too. But I can't wait to start. I see how great some of the plants get, and how well things are growing in there. And I'd say in a couple weeks I'll know a lot more. I did take all my microgreen trays and stuff out there, and I haven't started them yet, but I want to get those going out there as well. I figure if I'm going to heat the greenhouse, I might as well grow those out there too.
Might as well.
Yeah. Use the
Do you
space.
have water out there? Well, do you have like a spigot in there?
No, I'll have to take water out there to pour the water in and stuff, but that's okay. It's just, 20 steps out the back door and I'm in there. So no big deal.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's been a lot of fun. So looking forward to a winter of that. Hopefully it continues to go well. Now, it's going to be a lot colder this weekend. It's supposed to get down to the low 20s the next few days. So I'll definitely have an opportunity to fire up the old wood stove and keep that, try to keep the heat going in there really well.
Yeah, you'll have an opportunity to test that thermal mass.
Yeah, see how it works. But other than that, yeah, between that, the bricks and the water and everything, there's definitely a lot of stuff in there that can hold some heat and help it hang on. But I do have an electric heater in there on a thermostat, pretty much as low as that heater will go, just for when it does cool down, it can kick on like in the wee hours of the morning before when the heat dies down, and that can kick in and keep it warmed up. Plus, I do have a fish tank heater, which they're really low wattage in the down in the water to kind of just keep it from anything ever freezing over or anything like that. I don't think it's ever going to get that cold in there, but if it ever did, that would prevent that from happening.
So your goal is to keep it just above freezing then?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty
Without
much
the
what
wood
that
stove
does.
anyway.
Yeah, that's what that would do. Yeah. Because nothing I'm really growing. I mean, a couple of things I'm growing. I do have some cherry tomatoes in a pot in there that are that I just basically I had planted all summer in a pot, and I just took them in there, and they're continuing to produce in the greenhouse right now. So we'll see how long those
Nice.
go. I don't know. Oh, I was going to ask you, how's your peppers doing? I know you brought some peppers in the house. How are those doing?
They're going very slowly. So, but they're not dying.
They
They're just
didn't
going
die.
really slow. I think it's probably the lack of light
You have them under
because I
grow
have
lights?
them. I don't right now. I
Okay.
moved them into the house. We have a big bay window and I put them in there just for the time being
Okay.
because my basement was kind of trashed from, I have so many potatoes. I didn't know what to do with them because my potato crop was pretty amazing. So I finally have all of that taken care of and my seedling area and taken care of. So I think I can finally put my grow lights up. It's a pretty tight space down there, so I had to
Mhm.
reorganize. But
Yeah.
once I get my grow lights up there, I think I'm gonna have to move those under there because they're alive. They're
Yeah.
just kind of
Just kind of
stagnant.
staying where they're
Yeah,
at. Yeah,
they're
not really
not doing
growing.
much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but my hibiscus that I rescued from the deer. So I had started a hibiscus seed last spring and I planted it outside at our property. And somehow, even though I have a 7-foot fence, something was eating it. I think it was deer, but I don't know. Something ate it down to nubs, and I thought it was going to be dead. But I dug it up, brought it back, and it's looking beautiful again. So I saved it.
Awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
going to have to let it get a little bigger before I stuff it in the ground next time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Let it be a little stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. The well, I'm curious to see how this peppers do this winter. So you'll have to
Me
keep
too.
us
Yeah.
yeah.
I have.
I wonder if they're going to actually produce new peppers. Is what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
the
see.
thing.
I never actually got any peppers off of these. They were so
Oh.
slow. I don't
What kind of
know if
peppers
it-
are these?
They're Texas birdhouse peppers.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then I also had paprika peppers to
Okay.
make paprika because I use a lot of paprika.
Yeah.
So I brought both of those in. So I'm hoping I got my plants in a little bit late. And then of course we live up here in the north. So I thought maybe they just needed a longer growing season. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely want to hear more about that as it progresses. I would love to see how those do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never brought peppers indoors, but we always get such a good harvest of them here that, you know, I don't really need them to continue to grow for me. I've got so many put up. Like there's a bunch of them that ended up in the compost bin, to be honest with you, this year, because I just couldn't even.
I'm jealous.
I mean, I tried to give a bunch away and people weren't even taking them because I had so many of them, and it was crazy. I wish I had the ability to set up at the farmer's market or something because I could have probably sold
Right.
a bunch of them.
Yeah, my goal was to can a bunch of banana peppers this year, and I canned 3 pints. That's not
I
very
had
many.
so many banana peppers.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was probably the thing we get the most of, but even the jalapeno and the cayenne and I mean, just everything. It was crazy. Even green peppers, just the bell peppers. We had a ton of those as well.
See,
They did
mine was
really well.
potatoes and green beans. Just
Yeah.
oh my, potatoes and green. So many potatoes and green beans and kale. I still have kale and chard.
Well, those are,
Oh, crazy.
I do too. That's the only thing I have out in the garden is actually
My
chard.
Brussels sprouts.
I think I have some mustard, some collards maybe still out there growing, and the and chard and the kale are all out there, and everything else is out of the ground now. Yeah.
My Brussels sprouts are still, and I have a Brussels sprout now. I went out this morning. It's about the size of a nickel.
Awesome.
So
Well, you
they're
might.
starting to. I might actually get them. I actually covered them. Speaking of getting into our topic, I actually have leaves pushed up around them.
Yeah.
Now they're supposed to be able to stand frost and stuff like that, but we've had a few freezes.
Well, yeah, and I did the same thing with some leaves. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Yeah, well, I guess with that we could just go ahead and jump into our topic. Today we're going to talk about ways to make use of those fallen leaves. And it sounds like you're doing that. I'm definitely doing that. But do you have a lot of leaves on your property?
Oh my, we have tons and tons of leaves. We're
Yeah,
kind of
me
parked
too.
in the middle of a oak/maple forest.
Oh,
so.
that's well, as we get down into leaves that are some of the best leaves to use, those are some great leaves to use.
Yeah, we
for
have
sure.
lots and lots of them. Now, we don't have very many trees in our yard specifically, but we're a quarter of an acre and all the houses around us do. We did have some issues with some oak blight come through the neighborhood and take out a lot of the oaks.
Oh, really?
Which was 3 of our big trees we lost.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm the one with all the trees in my neighborhood. So all my neighbors are probably complaining because a lot of my leaves end up in their yard. But I try to keep most of them here because I want them, actually. I love having all these leaves because we use them in a few different ways. Not all the ways we'll talk about today I use them in, but definitely most of these ways I use leaves in a lot of these areas. But there's a lot of benefit if you're able. And I know it depends on if you have a lawn. Like, you don't want to leave. One of the first thing you can really do is just leave your leaves where they are. There's benefits to doing that. If you leave a really thick layer on a lawn, it can kill your grass. So, I mean, of course, you don't want to do that if you've got a lot of leaves. But if you have a small amount of leaves just here and there, they're just scattered about on a lawn, run over them with a lawnmower, shred them up, or just leave them alone. It's really good for the soil if your soil can kind of take those in. It has a lot of benefits for your lawn, even if you leave some on your lawn. But also, if there's just an area you can do it in, leave a thick layer of them in one area, maybe that's not lawn, or kind of in an area that's more of a natural habitat, because they have great wildlife benefits. A lot of animals like toads and just a lot of different kinds of beneficial things that you would want on your property use leaves to live in through the wintertime. And so it's great to leave.
We have worms in ours all the time. When we leave a pile, there's worms all over in it.
Really?
Yeah, we always get worms in ours.
Okay, like earthworms or what?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely leave them out there, and it benefits both the micro and the macro organisms. It'll do a lot for the microorganisms in your soil. But like I said, there's a lot of things. Like I said, toads, lizards, even some birds will use leaves in the wintertime to build their nests and stuff to live in. They'll take them up and nest in them. A lot of insects, turtles. I mean, there's just a lot of things that will get in a thick pile of leaves and kind of survive the winter that way. So, if you can leave the leaves in some areas, in a more natural area, they have a lot of benefit. So it's a good thing to do if you can do that. You can't do that everywhere. And I rake up quite a few of them to use them in other places. But where you have to break them up, there's plenty of things that you can do with them as well. But I just think if you can, leave the leaves where you can, because they, especially if you have a larger area or a more natural habitat area, those things that are going to use them leaves for a habitat are going to benefit you the next year. They're going to eat a lot of your damaging insects, or they're going to benefit your soil. Like you said, the worms, they're going to having tons of them around is obviously good for your soil.
Right.
So yeah, it's great to leave some where you can leave some. And I don't rake my yard perfectly. We'll rake up if there's like big thick layers of an area. I'll take those leaves and use those for other things. But part of my lawn where they're just scattered about, I don't even worry about them. They're just going to lay there and feed the soil, to the rest of the year. And then we have a couple areas in the backyard that's more natural around my compost bin. I don't really mow around that in that back area back there. Now we're dealing with smaller properties, so we don't have like big natural habitat areas, but I do have an area back there that's kind of weedy and where I keep my compost and stuff. And I just let them lay all over back there. So if anything wants to use that area, they're welcome to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. We use it a lot that way too. We have an area where we put them. Actually, we use it to suppress the weeds in an area that always gets out of control during the summer. We just stick them on there.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to the next thing, which is like for a mulch, garden mulch. You can use them to suppress the weeds for sure. I mean, I pile them up. When I planted garlic this year, that's what I did. I piled a bunch of leaves on top of my garlic. So it's a great insulator for it, protects them, breaks down, really feeds the soil because, garlic's a heavy feeder anyway. So the leaves will really help feed that soil too. So yeah, we put a little compost in there, but then I pile leaves on top of that. So it's going to really help feed that garlic. So yeah, things like that will really, really benefit. I found I was mulching some pots. Like I planted some onions in some pots in my greenhouse, and I put, an inch of leaves over the top of that just to kind of help with the, not so much weeds, but with soil, with water retention.
Now, do you, when you say you're putting leaves on, are you putting whole leaves?
I did. Yeah. I just put the whole leaves on those.
I did that with some pots to kind of help fill out, because some of these big pots that I have, because I do have several big pots, take so much soil.
Oh, so you put in the bottom. Yeah, we'll get to that here in a few minutes as one of the things. Yeah, because I think that's something we'll definitely talk about here in a few minutes. but yeah, you can put them underneath. I put them on top just to, again, shade the soil a little bit, because I had those pots kind of setting, in a greenhouse when the sun's beating through there, it's pretty intense. So, kind of, it'll really help keep that soil from drying out on those pots and stuff, to have a little bit of coverage on there. So I did that, and I put it on top of those. But I do that on my beds. Leaves are probably the number one thing I use on my beds, honestly, just for a weed suppression. It'll break down and feed that soil. Now, it may not completely break down. If you put whole leaves on there, it may not completely break down over the winter. Depends on how thick you are, what kind of leaves you have. A thicker leaf takes a lot longer to break down. Yeah. Some leaves break down really fast. Some leaves don't. Some leaves will hang around. But, but at the end of the year, like if it's time, if spring gets here and it's time to, get stuff planted, I'll just take whatever's left on there and just kind of pick them up with my hands, throw them in the compost bin. I don't worry about it. And then the ones that did break down underneath, I've really went into that soil, created a humus for that soil, and it really just changes the whole tilth of the soil. It'll aerate it a lot. It just really improves it a lot. You can just tell when leaves break down on your soil. It just does a lot for soil.
We have issues with ours getting matted together because we have a lot of them. Usually we run ours through the lawnmower and then
exactly. You can do that. You can shred them up a bit, and it'll help them break down a lot faster. So if you've got thicker leaves or leaves that just are known for not breaking down very fast, it's really a good thing to do. When I compost them, which would be the next thing we're talking about, composting your leaves. I do that for compost because it takes a long time for them to break down in compost. Usually it depends on how hot in the wintertime, it definitely takes a long time for them to break down. During the summer, they break down a lot quicker because you can get a lot more heat in your compost bins. But so I'll definitely shred them if I'm putting them in the fall for the winter, add them to the compost. Now, when you're adding, do you compost your leaves, any of your leaves?
We don't typically add them to our actual compost. Well, we have. I guess I did this year, but I try to be really careful because we have issues with the matting and then they just stay there. Mm-hmm. So we usually do, leaf mold, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the number one things. That's typically what we do.
But we do add, we usually use them to cover the garden. Yeah. And then as leaf mold, we don't use them a lot in the compost. That, and I don't have a great area for compost right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I have quite a bit of compost bins. I have like 4 different ones going, plus some stuff on the beds, even composting. I actually have some right on top of some beds that I'm composting right there. I just kind of in place composting. Yeah. And then I'll rake that up and get it out of there in the spring, but I'm just kind of letting it do it right over the top of the bed in a couple places. And, but then I have some actual bins too that I've set up, and, I do add some leaves, but I'm careful about leaves because leaves have a really high carbon ratio, like 80 to 1. So on the carbon to nitrogen. So in other words, if you're adding leaves, you don't want to add too much compared to your green, your nitrogen stuff. Now, if you put fresh leaves in there that have just fallen, like as soon as they fall, they actually have a little bit more, like it can be as low as 30 to 1, like when they first fall. Right. But if they're really dry and crumbly, it's like 80 to 1. So it takes a lot. You can just slow down your compost a lot. You get too much carbon and not enough nitrogen, your compost will not heat up, and it just won't break down as quickly. Because a compost is a bacteria and heat when you're doing compost in that way. Right. And
that's part of why we haven't done it, just because we don't have a lot of the green to add, struggle with adding enough green to offset all the leaves. Yeah.
Well, like in the wintertime, we'll add a lot more food scraps and stuff, which turns into greens. In the summertime, we have tons of greens because I'll add stuff. We're cleaning out our kitchen scraps, like we're cutting our vegetables and all that stuff will go in. That's all greens. Lawn clippings can go in there, and that's greens. I usually don't break those up, but you could. I mean, there's a lot of greens, more green opportunity in the summertime than there's in the winter. But even like I said, your leftover scraps and stuff and food and stuff in the wintertime is a green, and it'll go in there and do some good. So you just have to make sure it's appropriate. Now, with for best results, you want a 30 to 1 carbon on the carbon to nitrogen ratio. Now, what that looks like in volume is about 3 to 1, though. In most cases, like I said, leaves can actually be, because the carbon ratio is higher, it's more like probably a 2 to 1. with,
Right.
carbon or your browns and your greens. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It looks like, in other words, like if you put a layer of leaves, you might want to put like 4 inches layer of leaves and a 2-inch layer of green, where
Right,
normally you might put 3 or 4 inches of a brown to 1 inch of green, or 2 inches of green or whatever. So you just have to kind of think about the ratio to get the best results. Now it'll all break down over time, even if you're off.
Yeah,
but if you want to get the quickest results out of your compost, that's kind of the ratio you want to do to maintain it. Because you can get if you do it right, you can get some heat building up in the wintertime, even with a compost bin, if you do it right.
Yeah, if you have a really big one, yeah.
Yeah, if you get a big enough pile and you got your ratios right, you can get a hot compost in the wintertime.
Yeah.
But it's a lot harder to get that to happen.
Yeah. We have such a volume of leaves here. It is unbelievable how many leaves. That's what we just have a hard time getting. That's why we put some in the compost, but not a ton. I mean, it's such a small portion of the amount of leaves we get. Like our leaves are epic.
And I find shredding them for the compost definitely speeds things up and helps it go a lot quicker for the actual compost bin. I don't put whole leaves in the compost bin because it would take a long time for those to break down in compost. But you can do that with a lawnmower and a bagger. You can do it with just a lawnmower and rake them up. You can get, like you and I both have on our chipper shredders, we have leaf mulchers on them. Yep. You can buy just leaf mulchers too, though, the electric leaf mulchers, and they're not bad. Yeah, I've heard good things about them. I don't own one, but like they do probably better than the ones on our chipper shredders because that's what they're made for. They're I find those ones on my chipper doesn't do great. It does all right, but it doesn't really grind them up like I like them to.
And this time of year, I don't know about where you are, but it's kind of rainy season here.
Yeah,
so
putting
when
wet
the
ones
leaves
in
are
there.
wet, they're a lot harder to shred.
Yeah, so I think having an actual one that's having a tool that's dedicated for that's actually made for that, it probably works a lot better. So those electric leaf shredders probably are really, really good. But I think a lot of people just if you have a lawnmower with a bagger, I think that's great too. You can probably just run over them and dump it out, and it's pretty easy. Also, probably does a good job.
That's kind of what we do. We don't normally bag our grass when we cut it. We usually just put it back down on the grass. But in the fall, we will. That's what we do with ours, basically.
Yeah, yep. I just I'll do the same thing if I'm putting them in the compost bin. Now, that brings us to the next thing, though, and that's if we're making leaf mold. I do that a little different. Leaf mold is probably, in my opinion, is the best use of those leaves. I mean, I think raking on top of your garden beds is another great use, but I think making leaf mold you're going to get a lot of benefit from making leaf mold. So someone's like, well, what is leaf mold? Because maybe people don't know that word. It's not. I don't even know why they call it leaf mold. I mean, when you think mold, I think something that looks moldy, and I don't see that necessarily.
Sometimes you get the little white mycelial in there, but
you'll see that the fungus, because that's what the process is. So what leaf mold is what makes it different. It basically is just a breakdown of your leaves naturally. And what makes it different than compost is when you're talking about compost, it breaks down with heat and bacteria is what generally breaks the compost down. But with leaf mold, it's a fungal process that breaks it down because it's a lot slower and it's more natural. It's what you would see in nature. You walk into a woods, and a thick woods with lots of tree cover, all these leaves are on the ground. If you ever rake back those whole leaves on top, you're going to start seeing this sludgy kind of dark soil with a lot of mycelium in it. You'll see the white mycelium in them, and you'll see that, and that's your leaf mold breaking down into the soil. Now it'll eventually form a humus that'll kind of be more into the soil, but right between there, you'll have that leaf mold, and it's one of the best things for soil there is.
It's pretty amazing.
It has been designed that way. It is just, it'll do so much for your soil. And the downside of leaf mold is it takes a long time for it to break down. It's kind of a slow process, but that's why it is so good. I mean, it's like I said, it's a fungal process breakdown, which is a lot slower than the bacterial composting method. So that's the downside of it. But when you add it to your soil, it has all the benefits of helping with moisture retention. It does a great job of aerating the soil. structure, putting air pockets in the soil, makes your soil just really kind of light and fluffy when it's added
like
into
a
your soil.
cake.
Yeah.
It's like a cake consistently, like a thick chocolate cake.
Yeah. It has so much benefit for the microorganisms in your soil. It's unbelievable. Like they feed on it. It's so good. Like some of the best soil you'll ever find on this planet is in a forest.
Yep.
Underneath all the leaves. Dig that back and you'll see that dark, rich soil. It's amazing stuff. And that's from the leaf mold. I mean, it has so much life in the soil when you add leaf mold to soil. And it benefits, like we talked about earlier, has a lot of benefits for the macroorganisms too. There's like the earthworms and things.
Yeah.
They really can flow through that soil a lot better. Now, when they're going through it, they're leaving their castings. A lot of bugs are in there as well, doing their thing. So you're getting a lot of that. Your nematodes and whatever. It really increases the volume of a lot of the macro and micro organisms in your soil. So, like I said, it'll add a lot of mycelium, a lot of good bacteria to your soil that are good, that your soil needs to be a living soil, which is going to help your plants just flourish. So having that in there is just, like I said, I can't really think of too much that's kind of a natural thing that you don't have to put a lot of work into that does so much for your soil.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. I mean, you can speed it up like we talked about if you shred it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but the trees are natural. They accumulate minerals from the ground and then they drop those minerals in their leaves. So when you're making this leaf mold, you're getting all of those minerals that those leaves have. Yeah. It's just one of my mentors, his soil block mix uses a lot of leaf mold in it.
Yep.
Because it's so good for the plants. So.
Yeah. That's what we're going to talk about, some of the uses for it here in a little bit. But absolutely, it does take a long time though. If you put whole leaves, depending on what kind of leaves you even have, some leaves break down quicker. Probably. If they're thinner, like more crunchy type leaves that just naturally kind of just dissolve quickly into a leaf mold. There are some that do better, but on average, it's going to take a couple years if you do nothing to your leaves. If you just pile them into what I like to do is either you can buy those bins that are like they have the plastic ones or they have the wire ones that you can put up. Those work really good because what the problem is, if you just pile up a bunch of leaves, the wind might take a bunch of them away. So if you can put them in some kind of an enclosure or even like a pallet bin or whatever, and the bigger the pile, again, the better. You can just pile them up and leave them sit for a couple years and they will just naturally make leaf mold. That's what happens. It's just nature. Ours
is just an old piece of fencing we put in
you can just wrap some fence up.
Circle. Yep.
Absolutely. Take some old field fencing, put it in a circle, dump your leaves in there. And if you got nothing but time, dump them in, let them sit. It works great. If you have less time that you would like to invest in making leaf mold,
right,
you can do some things. You can shred them. You can kind of moisten up the layers a little bit, and you can turn them periodically every couple, 2 or 3 weeks, kind of flip them around, make sure the ones on the outside get turned to the inside to help kind of break those down, let that mycelium get to work on those. And it will definitely, you could turn years into months. It can, 6 to 8, 9 months, you can have it. But if you did nothing, a couple of years, you'll have good leaf mold, and you'll kind of see the progress. You can reach in there and you'll have these whole leaves on the outside. You kind of reach in a little bit. You see this partially broke down where you'll have chunks of leaves and the leaf stems and then as you get more to the center, you'll have like this really fluffy where you can't identify a leaf. That's kind of your finished stuff. Like I said, it's great stuff. And then some of the ways you can use that are there's really 3 ways I use leaf mold. I will actually, if it's not all the way finished, I will make use of that too. And I will use that as a top layer mulch. And like say it's maybe only been sitting for a year or so. There's still some chunks of leaf in there and you can definitely tell there's some substance to it. I might just put that on top of the soil and I won't dig that in. And the reason I would not dig that in is because, again, it's a high carbon to nitrogen ratio, meaning if you mix that into your soil in that state, it can pull a lot of the nitrogen from your soil to try to continue to break it down.
Kind of like you would treat wood chips.
Yes. I would not mix wood chips into soil. You put it on top of soil. So if you just put it on top, it makes a great mulch, and you can let the organisms kind of work that into your soil. The earthworms will come up, pull some of it down. The insects, microorganisms, they'll get up there and do some work, and it will benefit your garden greatly. The best way to use it is to get it completely finished, though, and then mix it into your soil. Even take a broad fork or something and kind of lift and let it work down in there. You could actually you could even till it into your soil, and it would do wonders for your soil if you were using a rototiller. But yeah, getting it into your soil once it's fully broken down, it's amazing. It's probably, I think about like compost, and I think about like worm castings. Those are great for your soil, but honestly, I think leaf mold's probably the best thing you can put on your soil. Honestly,
it's got to be close, and it's one of the most accessible, free sources you can get. Now you're going to want to make sure you don't get it from sprayed trees.
Yes,
but you can get it. People give them away. They want them gone.
They set them out in bags on the road for you to pick up. It's amazing.
If you're willing to wait and you have a space, you could do a huge amount of them. And once you get that going, after a couple of years, you could have this unending supply if you rotated it properly. And all free.
That's the amazing thing. It's like we spend all this money buying composts and things to add to our gardens, and yet nature's just dropping the perfect stuff down for our garden. It's right there on the ground. And we just have to take a little bit of time, rake it into a pile, and just give it some time, And like I said, you can speed that up a little bit, get you a shredder or whatever, or shred it somehow, moisten it just a little bit, turn it occasionally, and get a little quicker. But it's amazing. It's just an amazing amendment for your soil. It does so much for the tilth. It does so much for the life in your soil. It just does so much for that texture. And I just love to get your hands in soil that has a huge amount of leaf mold in it, because it. As soon as you push your hands into it, it. It just feels different. It's so aerated and light and fluffy, and it's amazing stuff, and it's so nice to work in. But you can also use it. You mentioned that somebody uses it for seed starting.
They do soil blocks, but they use it in their soil block mix.
I've actually just put it in trays and just nothing but leaf mold.
It's just like this. I don't know how to describe the texture of it, but it's like this. You can squeeze the fluid out of it, but it bounces back. It's like
it does really good.
Spongy, and
it drains well, but it also retains well. And that you think, well, how do those two things go together? Well, they do. It basically gets rid of the improper amount, but it maintains the right amount of moisture,
Right. And then it's just so mineral rich. It's great for raising seedlings in.
I use it that way. I will put it in trays. So I'll just, because I use trays, I don't have soil blocks, but I will put it in the trays and just use it for planting and put my seeds in. And it's a free soil starter. It is a seed starter. It's free. So, you can just.
Now you have me convinced I need to find more space for another spot. We have mountains of leaves around. So.
Yes. And like I said, it's so beneficial. Like I said, I think it's probably the most beneficial thing.
It's what grows big forests. So
absolutely.
The majority.
Yeah. So but it's probably the best way to use those leaves if you've got a place to do it. Now I mentioned earlier, though, moving on to the next thing, that I used it on my garlic. Now I was thinking as cover, a mulch cover, but really I'm insulating my what I've got there. Now you can insulate root vegetables. A lot of people leave potatoes, leave carrots, leave a lot of stuff in ground over winter sometimes. You can use leaves to pile up on these things to insulate the soil, and it will just insulate. Now I use them around trees. The trees that I don't have comfrey growing around, because now my comfrey automatically makes this big pile of leaves around some of those trees. But I have some that I don't have any comfrey around, and I'll pile leaves up around those trees. Now I always make sure I pull back those leaves a little bit from the trunk, because it'll hold a lot of moisture on the trunk of your tree, and it can allow a lot of give a great environment for things to eat at the bark of your tree also. So you want to kind of pull that back. Mice or anything, just even some insects and things too can get in there and really go to town on it. So you kind of want to pull it back away from the trunk a few inches, but it really does a lot to insulate the roots that are right there at the soil level coming off the trunk. It's a great insulator there.
How do you hold that in there though? Like with the wind, because they're shredded, they stay a little better, I suppose.
They will. And when they're wet, they'll kind of stay to them. So when you get, like I'm just now starting to do that. put some around some trees
Okay.
and stuff and pull it back. So it's, we're going to be getting snow here, and the snow will kind of hold it. And it'll break
Once
down
the
and
snow
collapse.
comes, yeah.
Yeah. It just, you want to watch it though. And kind of, if you see some kind of blowing up against the side of a tree occasionally, go out there and kind of pull it back a little bit. It ain't the most critical thing in the world, but I try to keep it away from the trunk a little bit because it does offer an opportunity for some damage there. It just having that trunk moist all the time too is not good. It can just cause rot and things also. So just keeping it back a little bit, but having it around the tree.
On our strawberries. I covered my strawberries in leaves, and I've been using them to keep my Brussels sprouts going. I've never grown Brussels sprouts, so those of you that have are probably laughing and saying, "Oh, they'll tolerate way more than what you've got." But just in case, I just kind of have them pushed up against the Brussels sprouts because I'd really like to pick them.
Yeah. They do.
Yeah.
I think it's a great insulator. It's a free insulator. Like I said, it's something that nature's just dropping around. You can drop it on your garden.
Right.
And do you leave any root vegetables in over the winter?
No, because they will freeze here.
Yeah, where you're at. In my area, we can definitely leave, I could leave some things out. I could leave carrots out for sure. And I could go out there and dig them up and they would probably be good. It depends. Some winters, maybe not. Yeah. A mild winter, definitely. Yeah. But I have some out there actually.
Yeah, I've tried a few times and it's never gone well. I can leave them in the ground for a little while, but our ground gets froze pretty.
Yeah, it goes pretty deep.
And it also depends for us if we get snow early in the year. So now if we got snow right now and it stayed, it does insulate the ground more. The ground temperature stays warmer longer. But if we, like right now, we have no snow. And if we got cold for a long time, that ground cools off quicker and freezes. But we get snow. Usually we most years we have snow by now and it stays till May.
Sounds horrible. No, I'm kidding.
I don't hate it, but members of my family do. But yeah, we get snow. Usually we have snow on the ground 5 to 6 months out of the year. So stuff freezes and then it's mushy and nasty. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just like I said, you can definitely use the leaves with a little extra, but in some places that may not work. You got really cold winters, it may not work, but the further south you go, it definitely works better to get some insulation on them crops that you might want to leave in the ground, like Jerusalem artichokes, for example. You can leave those in the ground up there, couldn't you?
We must be able to because they keep coming back.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, so I don't know if you would be on the edge, maybe something close where a bad winter might harm them. Some leaves might help protect those and insulate those.
Where mine are, we don't usually rake the leaves up. We just kind of leave the leaves. So that might be helping them. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned earlier that you put them in the bottom of pots. Yeah. And for some kind of filler stuff there. That's kind of a hugelkultur method.
Yeah. I have some big, like 20 to 25 gallon pots.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a lot of soil. And when you're on a small acreage like we are, I can't produce that much soil when I fill those. So we have down that you can use them in hugelkultur mounds. Now there's there's kind of like this modified version of hugelkultur where people will fill raised beds partially with some mass like that, with some biomass like that. Leaves can be that. You can, I mean, if you're doing an actual mound, you'll want to use logs and sticks and leaves. You'll want to kind of use a combination of all of those things. You wouldn't want to just use leaves. I don't think it would work probably, but I would think you'd want the combination there to get more spongy because the leaves pack tighter and you probably wouldn't get that sponginess in a hugel mound that you're kind of looking for out of a log that breaks down for water retention and things. But you can definitely be part of what you use. You could definitely tie them into your hugelkultur mounds. You can definitely, if you got some tall raised beds, you can definitely do the same thing. Add that as part of the biomass in the bottom of those raised beds that you're going to put the soil on top of, and even in large pots like you're doing. Yeah. So it's something that's going to break down and benefit the soil a lot, and it's going to fill up some space for sure. Yeah, we have done that I forgot that we had done that, but we have done that several places on our property. We're pretty hilly, and we've put in a few raised. I say raised, but they were like on contour. So to make it so everything wasn't rolling out, we built up one side of it so it was flat coming up a hill, and we've filled those with old punky wood and leaves several times
Yeah.
We just get so many leaves, you don't know what to do with them. So we've done that several times, and those beds grow wonderful. Now, we did find that it did work better if we shredded those, because the leaves would mat together, and then they created like this, I don't even know, it's like this impermeable slime.
Yeah.
That nothing drains through. So we have found it works better to
Have a mixture. Yeah.
have a mixture in there, have them either ground up or partially broke down already,
Yeah.
or not as many in there.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah, they do. That, you're right. They get on the lower levels of that. It'll definitely have like a, which it's fine when you're piling them up on a bed or whatever, because that layer just feeds the soil. But if you're looking for something that's gonna, you're wanting water to penetrate through it and get through it really well. Maybe that ain't the best way to arrange it.
In the pot is where I had the most issues when I did that. So the next ones I used the shredded, because when they were in the pot and I did the hole, they just kind of created this mat that didn't drain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I could see that. Yeah. So again, there might be some things you have to be careful about when using them in certain ways, because they might cause slight problems, but all in all, it's still a useful biomass to put in these things in conjunction with other things and in a certain way. You just have to kind of think about what works best there. So we're using them there too. I mean, it's still going to benefit your soil. It's going to do a lot for you. It's going to help retain moisture. It's going to feed the soil. It's going to do a lot of things for you there. So again, feeding the soil. The seventh thing we have here is kind of a little different, because I mean, there's a lot of people who burn their leaves. They pile them up, they burn them. You can do that. It's probably not the best environmental thing to do, but a lot of people do it. But can you make use of those ashes that you burn? One of the things you can do is make, we call it potash here. Some people go potash. That's how you pronounce it, I guess. How do you say it?
Potash.
Potash. I've heard people say potash. I don't know. I've heard people say it that way, but we call it potash, and basically it's potassium that comes in the ash. And some people put that on their gardens. You can take that and put that on your gardens, and it will increase the two things. It'll increase the potassium, and it'll also increase the pH of your soil. So you don't want to do it unless you need those things. So a soil test is kind of necessary before you're going to use it. But if you do need to increase the potassium in your soil, or you do need to increase the pH of your soil, you can use potash, which is from ash, and leaf ash contains that. So it will work for that. So if you do burn your leaves and you want to use it on your garden, if you need it, you can do it. Do not put it around things like blueberries, because you don't want a higher pH for blueberries. There's just some plants that you don't want to put it around. So you just make sure that you want the proper pH, or that you need an increased pH for your plants in that area. Or you need an increase of potassium. A lot of gardens do really well with an increase of potassium. So it's beneficial for sure in a lot of gardens to do that. There's a lot of people. I know when I was growing up, my dad always did that. We always took our wood stove ashes and took them out to the garden and put them on the garden. Always. It's just part of, we would dump them there and then just till them in, as when we tilled in the spring, till it all in. I don't know that we needed to do that, but he did it always, and it never seemed to hurt our garden. So
my father-in-law always did that too. Of course, I didn't grow up gardening or anything, but my father-in-law always used the wood ashes in the garden. And I actually used them this year, some of them, in my potatoes. Potatoes like potassium, and boy, my potatoes were fantastic this year.
There are some crops that do extremely well with really high potassium, and potatoes is one of them. So do a little homework, figure out what crops might benefit from that, maybe do a soil test to know what you have, and then go for it. I mean, if you're going to burn your leaves anyway, make use of those ashes and put them to use, because they can benefit your garden in a different way than just putting leaves on your garden. So it might be something to do if you want to do that. Now, burnt leaves can also make another thing called lye. And lye can make lots of things. Lye is used in making of soap. It can be used in like furniture polishes, drain cleaner, oven cleaners. It can make a lot of different kinds of cleaners and other things as well. And leaves produce lye. Now, I don't know if it's the best thing to make soap with, because I know when you're making soap with lye, you should use hardwood. Because there's oils in the softwood that don't mix well with the fats to make the soap. So I don't know about soap, but I know it does contain lye. And so if you're not mixing it with fats, because even softwood makes lye, it just doesn't make the best lye for soap. And I don't know. I don't know if you use leaves from hardwood trees, if it would make, I don't know. It might still work great. I don't know. Somebody can try that and tell us. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know it can be used as a drain cleaner. Now, I say that with some precaution. I also know it can do some damage because it's so abrasive and so strong, it can actually damage some kinds of pipes. So be careful, do some homework before you go doing that. It can be used as an oven cleaner, but it will remove more than just the bad stuff. It can remove paint. It can remove enamels. It's very strong. So if you're going to make stuff with lye, do your homework, make sure it's a proper thing. I know people use it to remove like stains from woods or change the colors of woods that they're doing woodworking projects with.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it can be used in that way too. I've heard of that, that lye can be used. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to use lye. I just don't know if that lye produced from burnt leaves will do everything that wood or hardwood.
It might make a softer soap, maybe. Instead of a
because you can make actually liquid soap with liquid lye soap also.
I'm going to have to research.
Might do that.
I actually make soap with lye.
I tried to do a little bit of research and I just couldn't find.
Because you use a different kind of lye for soft soap. But I've also read in the past when they historically made soap, a lot of that soap wasn't actually hard. It was a much softer soap than what we
so maybe they were using any kind of wood.
It just depends on how you're making it. I mean, they of course made it the old way with rainwater and hardwood ash.
Yeah.
And maybe it would depend on how many ashes you'd accumulate as to whether your soap got hard or not.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there's somebody in the audience.
I tried to do a little bit of research on it. I really couldn't find any information on it. So if somebody does some experiments with some leaf ash to make lye and different types of leaves that make certain kinds of ash, I would love that kind of information. I think that would be very useful because tons of people burn their leaves, people who don't burn wood for wood stoves or anything burn leaves. And if it's an option, if it's a way that you could get a dependable type of lye, say you're burning oak leaves, does it make a hardwood ash that can make soap well? I don't know. But I would love to know. I think that would be some useful information. So yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to experiment with that one day, or maybe we'll experiment with that one day and try it and just see if it works. Yeah.
I love my lye soap. I just make lye and fat soap. I don't add anything special.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're doing that and leaves are an option, I mean, you could take that ash and make use of it. Because like I said, there's a lot of people who burn leaves that don't burn anything else. And if you could use that on your garden and use it to make some products to use around the house, awesome. Use it. Cause I think it's a great use of what you have there on the property, and it's a way you can use it. So, yeah. Now you added this one and I forgot to add this one. I didn't even think about it, but you put down animal bedding, that leaves can be used for animal bedding. And you're right. It makes a great animal bedding. How do you use it when you use it for that way?
Well, we've never had anything but chickens, but we used it for the chickens, and the chickens will turn that. You add the chicken poop and then the chickens doing what chickens do, which is their little tillers. Man, that stuff came out absolutely beautiful. And then we would throw that in the compost because chicken poop's hot.
Yeah. Did you pre-shred it for the chickens, or you just let them shred it?
No, we let them shred it. They loved it.
Yeah, they love to shred them.
Yeah. So what we would try to do was bag up as many as we possibly could in the fall before they got all wet and nasty, because you do want them to be dry when you put them in the coop. And then we would put them in the coop, and why they were in the coop during winter, because our chickens didn't love winter, so they would be in their coop more in the winter. They would just shred those. It would give them something to do too. And then you could put a little feed if you wanted them to shred them more. But we would do like a deep litter method, and then we'd pull it all out, put it in the compost because chicken poop's hot. And then, it was great. And it was free. We didn't have to try to find hay or straw. We didn't have to find wood chips. It was just, it fell from the sky.
You could probably throw it in their nesting boxes and everying. And
yep. Yeah. They loved it. And they loved it because they would find like a bug or two here and there. And
you could bag that up fall and have enough to even, I mean, if you was going around collecting bags of it and you had all you want, I mean, there's just an endless amount of leaves. Everybody's bagging them up, throwing them everywhere, especially if you drive through a neighborhood. Everybody's just got, several bags of them sitting out front. Maybe if you had a place to keep all that stuff, you could use that into the next year, into the summer, even into the next year for all those things, for beddings and stuff.
Yeah, that was what limited us more, was how much.
It would take a lot of space to store up all those bags of leaves, but
they're not heavy. They're just big.
But it takes a lot of space to store up a bunch of straw too, if you're going to use straw or hay or whatever. So, I mean, if you could get it for free and use these leaf bags and just throw them in an old shed or something, you could fill completely full of them. I mean, plus a lot of that, if you let it sit that long, it's going to start breaking down a little bit. You can even take some of those and use that in your garden for some amendment.
Right. Well,
because it'll break down in bags.
With straw and hay now, it's really hard to find it not sprayed.
Yes, it's getting very difficult.
If your leaves, you know where they came from. They weren't sprayed.
Yeah. And if you're picking them up, a lot of people spray their lawns, but not a lot of people spray their trees,
Yeah, not a lot of people spray their trees. I mean, there's a few times where there's trees that are sprayed for specific reasons, but I think it's pretty rare.
Not too many people are spraying their oak trees and their maple trees and stuff. Not many people spraying those,
But your straw and your hay, it's pretty hard to source. And for us, we were putting that from the chicken coop to the compost to the garden, and I was eating that. So I mean, anytime you can be thrifty and healthy at the same time, it's a win-win to me.
And I think and I just look around and I'm this has come up a few times in the group. I've seen people talk about leaves and things in our Facebook group, and I just look outside and I'm like, man, there's so many uses for these things. We just don't need to be wasting them. I mean, it's a wonderful resource that's just getting dropped right on your property for you. And especially if you got a lot of trees like we do. I mean, it's just, the more trees I get, the happier I am about the big mess it's making on my yard, because that is just, it's like people always want to get a hold of these power companies. Oh, can you drop your mulch here? Can you bring your wood chips, bring them and just dump them on my property? Well, nature's dumping the leaves right there on your property right now. So you can use those. And it's something you don't have to go try to source. Now, like I said, unless you just don't have a lot of trees or don't have a lot of, access to, which I just can't really imagine, because in my neighborhood there's just so many people setting them out in bags everywhere. So,
I mean, I suppose there's places like, I don't know, Arizona, or there's places that don't have very many trees. We just have here, we're in the Midwest. I'm in Northern Michigan. There's just so many leaves. There's just an abundance, and it's, like I said, it's one of the best things that's been provided for us to grow things in, to grow trees in, to grow our vegetables in, to make use of, and like you said, animal bedding, to make things with it. I mean, it's just an amazing resource, and so don't ignore it, don't blow it off. It's like, or don't try to get rid of it. Don't ship it away from your property, I guess is what I'm saying. Just, you can use it. Right. Yeah, and you can even bag it off of your neighbor. I wonder too about using it, like, the woods is where mushrooms grow. I've never tried it, but I wondered if somebody grew mushrooms using it.
You know what? That's probably a possibility. Yeah, for sure. I don't know that I've ever seen mushrooms growing on them, but definitely under them.
That's what I wonder. Yeah. So it does feed that fungal. I'm going to have to ask my friend that.
Yeah. That somebody knows about that a little bit more. But there's a lot of uses there. We come up with 8 that are pretty just off the top of our head. And there's probably other uses for leaves that we didn't even think of, but you can definitely use them in a few of those ways, and probably use every leaf on your property and wish you had more before it's over with. So I wrote an article about leaf mold that it'll be in the show. You can find a link for that in the show notes. I have a link in the show notes about just composting basics that kind of breaks down the ratios and things and how to get started with the compost. We added a few other links. I actually found one on making lye from wood ash, but the concept would be the same for leaves, because ash is just the ash you're dealing with, not the wood or the leaves themselves, but how to make it from the ash. So that link will be in the show notes as well. I even have one in there about unclogging a drain with lye. So like I said, that I'm not taking any responsibility for that. You go check that out yourself, see if it's something you're interested in trying. I guess in an emergency and you had to have it, I would probably use it, but evidently it works pretty good, maybe too good.
Well, that's where they sell it in the plumbing section.
Yeah, right. So yeah, you can try it if it's something you want to try. And just leaves for just, like I said, how to leaving leaves, the benefits of leaving leaves on your property for wildlife and soil and things like that. There's a few articles that I have links to in the show notes. So if you want to head over to the show notes, you can find those and get a little more deeper information on those things. We kind of took the airplane view and kind of went over these things today, but you can get in a little more details with those links and check them out. Yeah, I think take advantage, be thrifty, be a good steward of what you have, and make use of those leaves. They're a really, really great resource for your homestead. So use them in a great way.
I know.
Anything
I tried
else?
to find information on different leaves because I know different leaves have different.
I have in the
Breakdown.
article. Well, in the article that I wrote on leaf mold,
Did you find
there's
that?
there's a couple. Yeah, it basically just
Yeah.
comes down to there. Okay, I can just give you a brief overview of there are some leaves like walnut leaves have juglone
Right.
in them. You probably
Right.
wouldn't want to use that for making leaf mold or as a garden bedding, because the juglone can actually stunt the growth of a lot of
Inhibit, yeah.
things. So not using walnut leaves is wise. There are some leaves that are just thicker leaves. I'm trying to think of a couple right now. I'm kind of drawing blank. Those take a lot longer to break down.
Right.
I know oak breaks down quick. I know maple, I think, breaks down pretty quick. There's some that in that article, I have a few listed,
Right.
a handful listed of things that are thicker, leaves that break down slower.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. They just take longer.
No.
Matter of fact, you could probably break them down just quick if you shredded them.
Mhm.
You could throw, like, some leaves will break down quick without shredding them. Some you should
Right.
probably shred even to get them to break down in a couple of years. So I kind of had mentioned that in the article, I believe. So, but yeah, definitely
and
anything
even
with
the-
juglone, I would avoid.
And the mineral content in some of those are different. Like I have a lot of
Mhm.
white mulberry,
Yeah.
which has different mineral content than my oak leaves. So, if you wanted to get really sciencey about it, you could.
I think the best thing you could do would be
like
a mixture of leaves.
Yep.
So
the
you get like a
best.
combination of the minerals and the different qualities that each one of those would have for any of these things would probably be the right way to go about that.
Well,
So,
diversity is always good
Yeah,
for your
always.
compost pile, and it's going to be the same for your leaf mold.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree. So yeah, that's what we have for you today, folks. Anything else you want to talk about today, Rachel?
I think that's it.
I did want to mention, folks, that we have a Patreon that we kicked back up a few weeks ago that, and I bring this up because I have had a couple people complain that there are ads playing in the podcast. There's usually a couple ads that play in the podcast, and that's to kind of help us with the funding of the podcast. But you don't like ads? Hey, go sign up on Patreon for just, I think $5 a month. That's what we have it set at. You can get ad-free versions of the podcast. Plus, there are some extra podcasts even in there, and we occasionally drop some extra stuff in there. There's some videos in there that drop in occasionally. You get a few extra things, So if you want to be a Patreon member, we appreciate that, and you won't have to listen to any ads. Also, you get ad-free listening. So for some of you, that's important.
Right.
And we appreciate it. So if you want to be a Patreon member, you get a few extra bonus things there, and we really appreciate it. And if not, keep on listening and enjoy the ads.
Right.
We don't mind that either. So either way, it helps. So there you have it, folks. Well, if there's nothing else, Rachel, I guess we'll end this.
All right.
All right, folks. Until next episode, happy homesteading and God bless.
And grow where you're planted.
Looking around, I finally see I think I need a change. The rat race, I wanna flee, my world I'll rearrange. I'm getting back to the roots of how it's meant to be. Growing gardens, picking fruit, racing livestock, living free. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead. A lot of folks don't understand why I wanna live this way. They've never eaten from their land like we do here every day. Snapping beans like Grandma did, sitting on her front porch. Hunting and fishing like a kid once you've done all of your chores. It's a modern homestead. there's a way to make this change. You gotta start today.